This video is going to be all about the amazing vacations you can do to travel away from Ontario. Over the few years of me doing this vlog, I've noticed that there's a lot of conversation about people wanting to go on vacation from Ontario, but the prices being extremely expensive. And by the way, I totally agree. Hence why I'm doing this video, to share with you what I have done in terms of travel on a budget. But there's a twist. I'm actually going to be releasing two videos. So of course this video about the vacations outside of Ontario, and I'm also going to release at the same time another video about staycations in Ontario, so that essentially you have options. Let's go. We are going to start this list with Orlando, Florida. And before you think that I'm going to go into talking about all of the theme parks Orlando has, I'm not even going to mention them here. There's so much to do here, but not a lot of people realize that. So number one for me in terms of Orlando are their springs. And specifically, they have manatees in their springs. Now, you cannot touch manatees, but you can definitely watch them. They're majestic, and you can also swim in the springs. Usually, the prices to go into a spring are very reasonable, something like $10. As there are many alligators, you can sample an alligator in many of the restaurants, so that's a unique thing to do. Another amazing thing to check out is the Kennedy Space Center. It is huge. You definitely need almost a whole day to explore everything. It is very interactive. By the way, I did a whole video about our Orlando trip. I'm gonna link it down below so you can check it out. One more thing that we did do that is a bit of extra money is the kayaking at nighttime. So you have this glow at nighttime. It's the plankton, I think it's called. It's magical. Another very, very unique thing. And if you do rent a car, you can go all the way to Daytona Beach and spend the day at a very pristine beach. And of course, theme parks. I'm going to link down below my experiences at Universal and Disney parks, which, by the way, were absolutely magnificent and amazing. But no, you do not need to go to Orlando for the theme parks. So in terms of the hotel, I highly recommend you stay at the Universal's Endless Summer. There are two resorts. One is called Dockside and one is called Surfside. And both of them are amazing. We stayed at the Surfside, but over here, Dockside is only $170. For the flight over here, I usually go to kayak. It's one of my, shortcuts, my tips, because right away you see green means cheaper flights, yellow more of an expensive, red of course more expensive. And when you click on the greens, you will find your cheaper flight. Over here, direct flight to Orlando is only $341. So in total, and this is, by the way, very rough estimate, I'm not taking into account any of the extracurricular activities you will do, such as theme parks and renting kayaks. This is just the flight, which is $341, and a hotel, which is $172. And just for one night there, it's going to be $513. Obviously, you're going to stay there for more than just one night, so that goes up and up and up, but it also depends how many people go, because you can share the accommodation if you do go in a groups of, let's say, 4. The second vacation is very nearby, is Miami. So it took me actually a long time to check out Miami. I, for some reason, didn't wanna, but oh my gosh, I absolutely adored it when I went there. Over here is Miami Design District. Professionally, I'm a graphic designer, and I loved how it was designed, like architecturally, very beautiful, very modern. They have their area with the higher-end stores, which was also interesting to check out. Everglades Park is the park where you have the alligators. They have those speedboat hovercrafts that kind of take you through the marshes. We got to see a lot of activity in the water. I've heard that some people don't get to see a lot of alligators, but I think it depends maybe on the month. So do your research. This is the boat over here I'm showing. The speedboat in itself was just so much fun. Another absolute must visit in Miami is Witchwood District. It's a whole kind of area, a number of blocks, and it's all about graffiti and huge size, like large scale graffiti. Again, I love any kind of artsy things like that. They are so well done, amazing artists. One more thing you need to do in Miami is, of course, Key West. You cannot go to Miami without going to Key West. What is Key West? It's sort of like their islands, like if, Toronto Islands to Toronto, except this is much nicer. The drive there is, I think, about 2-3 hours. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it's just a beautiful area. Key lime pie is the thing there. That's where it's from. They have a Hemingway house with a lot of cats that have 6 toes. So cool. In terms of prices, let's go. So Actually, another cool trick I'm going to show you is Google Flights. Type into Google Flights. It will be this system. Do not type in anything. Like, do not type in the city you want to go in. Do not type in the date. Just hit search. The only thing over here in the settings, I'm going to do direct flights, and I'm also going to kind of decrease the price so that it's not $2,000. We are looking for the cheapest flights from Toronto. By the way, you do need to specify where from, so from Toronto. Over here, the cheapest flights in the next vicinity, I think this is about half a year or so, you can definitely see Miami is the winner, only $290. So you can click on it and it will tell you what dates is that cheap price. This is at the end of September for slightly over a week, and it's with Flair Airlines. I'm not saying this is the way to go, I'm just saying that is the cheapest flights that you will find if you're looking for the cheapest flights. If you're flexible in terms of your dates, if let's say we were to go for that $290 flight with Flair Airlines, which by the way are not the most reliable airline, but you could do it if you would like to. Airbnb, when I went to Miami, it was about $150, so right now probably it's at least $200. And the total for just one night, $490. Of course, it gets to be more the longer you stay. Up next, we have vacation number 3, Las Vegas. This is probably one of my favorite vacations on a budget. Been here probably about 4 or 5 times. Never gets old for me. I know Vegas is a very specific place. If you have never been, you need to just go to understand it. It is overwhelming for me in the best way possible. I know some people find it a little too much. I love it. So over here, we're at the Wynn Hotel. They also have a really great all-you-can-eat buffet. It is superb, such a good experience, and the Wynn Hotel is one of my favorite hotels. It is on the pricier side in terms of staying there, but you can just walk around and just experience it. Here's the buffet that I mentioned, and over here is just how the hotel looks like. It's just so beautiful. This was close to Christmas time, so of course everything is very glittery and shiny. In terms of staying in Vegas, there are so many deals. You definitely, if you look far in advance, you will score some really great hotels for really cheap. You can even probably score them closer to your date. I've stayed at the nicer hotels. I've stayed at motels. I don't necessarily suggest that. There's lots of options. And just to let you know, I have released a really fun book. It's called Free or Almost Free Ontario Destinations, with lots of cool information and some really awesome road trips. And now that we are heading into the fall, I also have a very similar book about road trips in Ontario in the fall and winter time. And of course, both of these books are going to be linked down below. So yes, what else is there to do in Vegas? I like just walking around all of the hotels, checking them out, trying their food, trying their bars. There are a number of hotels that have poolside, like you buy a daytime kind of pass and you just enjoy. There's also Old Las Vegas where you need to take an Uber to. Definitely is fun to check out. One of the last times that I went to Vegas was actually specifically for the Arizona-Utah trip. So we went to Vegas and we rented a car and we just went all over. So actually it was Nevada that we started at, and then quickly we went to Utah and Arizona. There's a whole video about it. I'm going to link it down below if you want to check it out. Over here, of course, is the Antelope Canyon. That was, seeing how this was a whole week trip with a lot of different excursions. This was not a cheap trip, but it also, I don't think, was that expensive either. If you do your own research, if you book in advance, if you get a good deal on the car, I think it's a definitely doable road trip. Horseshoe Bend is another beautiful stop on the way. Basically the Grand Canyon, kind of in that area. You do like a little circle around and you can either go back to Las Vegas if you want, or what we did is we actually ended up in Phoenix, which is another very interesting city to check out, and we flew back from Phoenix. But for the purpose of this video, let's say you just go to Las Vegas for the weekend. By the way, it is totally fine and you do not need to go to Arizona because Las Vegas in itself is going to entertain you so much. I would spend at least 2 nights if you're going there for the weekend. If you can, spend a bit more. Over here, of course, are green little buttons to make sure we're getting the cheapest possible. And one of the first flights that popped out was only $213. Is that WestJet? I think that's WestJet. And over there, Porter also $233. Ridiculously good prices. So over here in terms of our money, we have the flight for 213 and hotel. You can go cheaper, you can go more expensive for $200. And the total becomes 413 for just one night, and of course goes up from there. The vacation idea number 4 is LA slash Big Sur. So LA, love LA, another one of my favorite cities. It is a bit of a harder city to explore by foot because it's such a vast city. What we did over here is we took one of those buses that takes you through the whole city, and actually we stuck in a lot of LA traffic, so I'm not sure if I suggest that. But in terms of price, I think it was about $50. I think we also got it at some kind of a Groupon coupon deal, and it was a nice way to see all of LA, but we spent just so much time in traffic. The food in LA is of course amazing, lots of Mexican influence. Over here we went for some tacos. Right by the Santa Monica over here. The piers are gorgeous. They're like a whole experience in itself. And when it turned to night, we even saw a drone show. I don't think that's an everyday thing. It was just a cool coincidence. In the morning, this was our breakfast, a very nice breakfast. And we headed to our little road trip. Again, you can just go to LA. I'm just including the other things that we did so that you have that option. But honestly, even a whole week in LA, you will not be bored. By the beach, go to different boroughs, check out all of their vintage stuff. They're very big on vintage and their markets. I love that kind of stuff. I would love to spend like about a week just in LA. Where did we stay? That was a bit of a challenge. If you want, we wanted to be very centrally so that we could enjoy the evening in LA, and that was expensive. Right by Santa Monica, I think we got a room for 4 of us with 2 queen beds, and it was still about $400. But obviously, the further you go from the center, the cheaper it gets. Over here is Malibu, and these pelicans are so fascinating to me because I never usually see pelicans, and they're definitely not afraid of humans. So Big Sur, what is that? It's like it's a location, it's a geographical location, but to get to it, you will need to go along the, I think it's Highway 1, like the coastal highway, and it is beautiful. In my opinion, it's the best looking kind of coastal drive you will ever get to see. This is San Luis Obispo, is another town along kind of the drive. A hotel I recommend you in St. Luis Obispo over here is Madonna Inn. It is just so weird and unique, and you need to book it in advance. It's about 300 something dollars, but it's so cool, highly recommended. They also have a restaurant that you need to pre-book to check out. There were a bunch of seals on the way. It's just kind of like spots. You will notice them. You will notice people kind of congregating, and you can check them out. And yeah, here's the view of the drive. Absolutely gorgeous. You can stop and just kind of enjoy the view and then continue going. Along the coast, surprisingly, there was very little. Like, I think there was just this one cafe, and everything in there was extremely expensive, but there was just one coffee place along like an hour drive. Maybe we didn't see it, I don't know, but that was interesting to me that it's not very commercialized yet. There are a number of beaches that you also can stop over at. It all depends on how much time you have. Honestly, in this area, it's such a beautiful, beautiful, area. You can probably spend as long as, 2 weeks easy. And over here is the actual Big Sur. That whole kind of, that bridge over there is the point of it. At this point, we headed back. You can also do another kind of loop inside the California, but you can head back on the coast as well to kind of see the coast the other way. In terms of price, over here, the Google flights. When you put from Toronto to LA, you will notice that the map pulls up in terms of when, and here you can select the cheapest ones. They are in green. How about October 1st, $259 for just maybe a weekend over here till October 3rd, and the price is $274. But if we click the non-stop flights, you will get to $361. So if you're okay with the stops, go for the cheaper one. If not, go for the more expensive one. So we have our flight, $361 plus hotel, roughly $200, $561 for just one night in LA. But do keep in mind, because LA is so spread out, you will probably need some kind of a budget for Uber.
Just want to remind you that if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Only 7% of people who watch me actually subscribe to me. So let's get that number a little bit higher. And I also am trying to get to 10,000 subscribers, hopefully soonish. So please help me out with that.
Vacation number 5 is Chicago. This theoretically you can drive from Toronto. I think it would take you about 8 to 9 hours. But the flights are not horrible, so I one time got a really cheap flight and I went there for the weekend. I think it was 2 nights, 3 days. I went by myself. I don't recommend you go to Chicago by yourself. It's a dynamic city, you know. I was never unsafe, but it's definitely a dynamic city, so it's best to go with somebody. That's at least my suggestion to you. Nothing happened to me, everything was fine, but it's kind of sort of like New York, the energy of New York, very, very fast-paced. I think one of the main things for me in terms of Chicago is the architecture. They are very big on it. It's very interesting. If you're into architecture, definitely take one of those tours on the canals. It's historic and I enjoyed it very much. Of course, then they have their Bean, downtown Chicago. Then they also have the most amazing art gallery. I think it's probably Art Gallery of Chicago. I also checked out the Blue Men's group show because I think Blue Men's are from Chicago. And I also remember checking out Chicago Zoo. That was actually free, at least at that time. In terms of where I stayed, I actually stayed at Hostel International, so High USA. What I did is, and this is I guess a bit of a life hack, is you can actually rent in a hostel, you can actually rent a private room. So over here is the joint rooms, but over here, private family room, and it's $209. And with taxes and everything, it's going to be a bit more. It is going to be $245. But I think that's actually really great because HIUSA Hostel is smack in the middle of Chicago, like downtown, very close to the Bean. You will be in a very safe, nice area with lots of people and in a private room. In terms of flights, let's check it out using kayak.com. What I also do over here is departure plus or minus 1 day and return plus or minus 1 day. And when you do select, still select your green buttons, so that kind of like the cheaper times. But what the kayak does when you select those approximate days, if you're of course okay doing that, is it finds you even cheaper. So over here, even cheaper deals. So over here I put in from 18th to the 21st, and kayak found me $363 deal from 17th to 22nd. So sort of kind of in the same vicinity, but cheaper. Vacation idea number 6 is Cuba. Why Cuba? Cuba has been, in terms of pricing, the least expensive in the last couple of years after major event that happened in the world in 2020. For me personally, I will always be a Mexico girl, but unfortunately Mexico has gotten much more expensive. So Cuba is safe, definitely. At least I never felt unsafe in here. So over here is our trip that we did 2 years ago. This is Varadero. Very well-priced trip. I think this was $1,000 for a whole week of all-inclusive. Our inclusive was Iberostar, Tainos. The beach there, superb. That's one thing, that's really the main thing you go to Cuba for, is their beaches. Just look at it, amazing. The only thing that's a little disappointing sometimes is if they have like a really strong winds, they actually put red flags, meaning do not swim, because what happens is after kind of stormy weather, there's a lot of jellyfish. I actually personally never saw one even after stormy weather, but I think they were being extra cautious. And what we did is we also took a trip to Havana, because you're in Varadero, this is not that far. You can either do a day trip. What we did, we actually got a ride from one of those tour buses, but we actually stayed for the night at an Airbnb, local Airbnb, and we returned the next day. We really got to experience Havana. We definitely enjoyed it. Number of restaurants. Over here's a gorgeous restaurant that we kind of stumbled upon right on the rooftop patio. Beautiful. The food in Havana, excellent. If you are not enjoying your food at the resort, you need to go to Havana, spend time here, because food here, they definitely do it really well. Price over here, what is this, $23? Very reasonable. And here's the nighttime in Havana. So the Varadero trip, because we've done the Havana trip and we've also done a couple of other kind of excursions, was $1,300 for each of us. So not exactly the cheap trip, but it was definitely worth it. And I think it was still on a budget considering it's a whole week. Just about 6 months ago, we went to Cayo Santa Maria, which is this island off of main of Cuba, so island on an island. It takes about 2 hours from the airport for them to get here. It is even further from Havana, so you would not be able to do a day trip over here from to Havana. I think to get to Havana is like 5 hours, which by the way, they still have the day trips. The beach here was amazing, and overall, I gotta say, this Cayo Santa Maria area, it was far more beautiful. It was more lush, like there were more greenery, more flowers. The food here was also surprisingly much better, which I never really understood why, considering this is 2.5 hours almost from like the main city. But the food here was much better than in Varadero, and fruits were also always very good. Guava, we had the guava over here, pineapple, just really well. We were really well fed. This was only $750 for 5 days. This was a 5-day trip. It was actually pretty great for us. We were not, we didn't feel like we didn't rest enough. The issue with this kind of island is that there's not a lot of excursions per se you can take, because again, it's so far from the mainland. There are a few excursions, but mainly this is just you go in, you enjoy your beach, you enjoy your food, and that is kind of it, which we were only happy with. But that is why I think this was fine for it to be 5 days versus a whole week. There was, by the way, a lot of entertainment, dancing. Each night there was entertainment. Everybody that we came across, like Cubans that were working on the resort, were lovely, very helpful. They also had this kind of market very close to the resort, so it's outside of the resort, but you get this tower that you can climb. And over here we had a cappuccino and just sat on this little restaurant patio and watched the people and just Cuban life. Of course, very touristy Cuban life, but still Cuban life. And over here is where we actually saw the Cuban life. That is not for tourists. This is how people live. Just look at the buildings. It's a bit heartbreaking to watch, I'm not gonna lie. This is on the ride back, the 2-hour ride back, where we got to see where people are living. And by the way, notice there were no cars, because right now the gas in Cuba is a big challenge. So not a lot of people are driving the cars. So where do I find the deals? I love my iTravel 2000. You put in the 3 to 4 days. That's where it's going to start finding you like smaller vacations. Pretty sure that's where I found my 5-day getaway. And the only thing I do here is I always click at 4 stars and up. For Cuba, you do need it to be, in my opinion, again, 4 stars and up, because you don't want a 3-star in Cuba. It would be a little too rough. So the total, as I already mentioned, 750.
So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know, please, if you have any other cool vacations that you've been on that you want to suggest to me and to other people down below. And also let me know if you watched the other video about the staycations in Ontario and what you thought of that. Please subscribe, like, and share, and I will see you next time. Bye.